Thank you very much. So I'm Claudia Thompson Deahl. I'm the Environmental Resource Manager and Advisor for Environmental Services for Reston. Reston has a population of 62,000. We're a large planned community. Within Reston, we have about 132 separate clusters or HOAs. How many people are from Reston that are here today? Wow, that's awesome, great. Yeah, feel free to jump in if I'm saying anything wrong. Okay, so what does Reston do to promote native plants? So each spring we have a native plant sale at Walker Nature Center Spring Festival. Nature by Design comes and brings plants for sale there. We also have a spring wildflower sale. Flyers for that are available online. You can place your order right now. They're taking orders and then come and pick them up on a particular date. You can find information on the reston.org website. The Nature Center also has a fall native shrub sale. And then we have demonstration gardens, and that's what I'm going to be highlighting in just a little bit. As far as educational outreach, we have articles in the Reston magazine actually just went out of print, but we have a branching out newsletter, which is the Nature Center's brochure, and it's also available online. We have a RA news piece, and there's website information about native plants. The Friends of Reston, which is a 501c3 charitable giving arm of the Reston Association, funded a native tree brochure for tree education. And every month we have a Habitat Heroes program. And at the Habitat Heroes program, we replace invasive plants with native species. And we work a lot with corporate groups and Eagle Scout groups and people that need to do community service hours to come and do these projects as well. We have a shoreline stabilization program where we use biologs for erosion around the lakes, and we plant those with native plants. We only plant native plants on our Reston open space, and we have about 1,300 acres of open space that the Reston Association is responsible for managing. And we also have various workshops as well. So I'm going to talk about a couple of gardening examples, and one is at the Walker Nature Center, and I invite you to come by anytime and take a look at it. It's on Way Drive in Reston. It was originally designed by Natural Resources, Inc., and then I'm going to be showing slides of our maintenance facility and the garden that we just put in there. I will tell you that they're also adding a sewer line in the front of the parking lot, so it's not looking so great right now, but it will be looking good again soon. I'm going to share photos of the Lake House, which is a community building that's over by Barron Cameron, and then I'm going to show some examples of our meadows. So this is the garden that's at Walker Nature Center, and you can see there's a goldfinch reading our interpretive sign there. And this is doing the installation. We're installing an inkberry right there, Ilex glabra, and come by and take a look at that garden, and it's really quite lovely. This is a picture of what it just looked like last summer. It's a LEED gold building. It's so green it's gold. Has a geothermal feature, and you can see there's some New England aster in the front picture. There's grasses. This has been there for quite a while, so it's very well established. This plant right here is really attractive to hummingbirds. Not only does it attract hummingbirds, it also attracts a lot of photographers. They love to come and take pictures of this when it's in full bloom. It's just loaded with insects, and it's really stunning when you first come up to the Nature Center. You've seen that in bloom laurel. And we also have a rain garden at the site, and it's got pickerel weed around it. It handles the flow of the metal roof that drains into the rain garden, handles the flow from the parking lot, and it had just rained. Rain gardens are designed to not hold water, so it's not going to be a mosquito problem. They're drained before the mosquitoes have time to breed. But that's handling the on-site drainage issues. A couple other plants at the site around the rain garden are cardinal flower, which is another hummingbird attracting plant. They love red flowers, and also a sweet bay magnolia, which is a nice mid-size magnolia native plant or shrub. Kind of falls in that category. Also at the site is a pond. This pond was installed by Harmony Ponds, and it's got a little waterfall to attract birds that come. That pickerel weed in there was actually from my pond that I thinned and brought over and put in at the Nature Center. But it's a good example of native aquatics that you could put in a pond at your own home, so you can come and get examples of what to use in your facilities. And we have a lot of school groups that come by here, and this is a big feature with elementary school kids. They love coming by. And these are some of the insects that you can find on the plants. One is a thread-waisted wasp, and he's on a sweet pepper bush, which is planted in the rain garden. Sweet pepper bushes are a lovely shrub, really a great pollinator plant. Highly recommend planting that. And we also have a butterfly class in July every year. We have a class, and then we have a butterfly count to encourage people to come and learn about butterflies. We also have a winter bird count and a summer breeding bird census. And we also have a dragonfly count and a dragonfly class. And this is really to educate people more about nature, because if there's one thing I've learned is that the more you learn about nature, you realize you don't know anything. There's so much more to learn constantly. And the butterfly class is that way. I mean, I thought, oh, butterfly's not a big deal. It's very difficult to tell these little skippers apart. It's like fall warblers, only even a little harder. And these days we don't use butterfly nets when we're trying to identify the butterflies. We use our digital cameras, and then you can enlarge them to look at the field marks. Because for dragonflies and butterflies, you're looking at field marks to identify them the same way you use these field marks for bird identification. So in your HOAs, you might want to consider some education programs to get your residents to see what's using your native plants. People might be really amazed to see the different kinds of butterflies that are coming to your plants. It's all about education. This is a locust borer. Somebody might think it's a bee, but it's a locust borer that's on a goldenrod. And goldenrods are really very pretty. There's 70 different species of goldenrods. There's even a white rod called the silver rod. There's a shade-loving goldenrod, zigzag goldenrod, goldenrods that actually have an odor. There's really a wide variety of different goldenrods you can use. They're really an underused plant. And then the other plant is bloodroot, which should be coming up here in another couple months. It's a beautiful springy ephemeral. It has white petals that are actually in the shape of a square. It's very delicate, really beautiful. And you can buy that at native plant nurseries. This is a bumblebee and an American lady butterfly and a coneflower. American lady butterflies are really just one of our stellar, gorgeous butterflies that will come to your native plants. Plant the habitat and they will come. That's kind of the theme of this whole talk today, is planting the habitat, and you're going to attract these wonderful insects to your garden. I remember putting in a birdhouse, and I bent down to pick up my hammer, and a little wren flew right over my back and into the birdhouse. You know, and I thought, this is so cool. You know, he needed this home. He was saying thank you. When I did the lake house garden that you're going to see in a minute, we were cleaning up, the crew had left, we were watering, picking up our tools, and it was just so fantastic to see a butterfly come to the garden before we even left on the day we were planting. You know, it's just fabulous. So these are bluebells, and beautiful bluebells, and May apples that come up in the early spring, and then there's the summer blooming liatris with a monarch butterfly, the gay feather or liatris. This is a great black wasp on a swamp milkweed. There's several different kinds of milkweed. When people say plant milkweed, butterfly weed is the orange one, there's swamp milkweed, there's common milkweed. But the wasps are actually good pollinators, and this is a beautiful cedar waxwing, one of my favorite birds. Are y'all birders? Who's a birder? So much fun. This is a cedar waxwing on an American holly, and Renee mentioned the fact about Nandinas killing cedar waxwings, really a tragedy and a good reason to replace them with a native shrub. There's so many other nice choices. This is an eastern-tailed blue butterfly, just a little guy, and summer azure that are on black-eyed Susans. This is a tiger swallowtail on a sweet pepper bush, and another one of my favorite that blooms all summer if it has the right habitat, and that's the native bleeding heart. Really a beautiful fern, plant with fern-like leaves, really gorgeous. Have you ever seen those monarch construction trucks drive around and they have a picture of a tiger swallowtail on it? Cracks me up every time I see it. I want to call him and invite him to my butterfly class. Okay, so that was the Nature Center garden, and I'm moving on now to where my office is, which is at the maintenance facility. And if you know Reston, the maintenance facility is across the street from Target, in between the YMCA and Fairfax County Parkway. Doesn't that sound lovely? But that's where it is, and that's where our maintenance facility is. And I was talking with some of the county urban foresters, and they were looking for a site to put in a demonstration garden for the developers around metro stations. And at the time, our maintenance facility was getting renovated, and so everything was getting torn up, and I said, well, what about right by our office? So it met the criteria of what they were looking for. They wanted a sidewalk, they wanted a parking lot, they wanted a certain width, which is going to be by the parking lot at the metro centers. So they came up with this really tongue twister name, the Reston Specific Streetscape Demonstration Project. And so you can see there's transitional landscaping, a more developed urban area, and this is the interpretive sign that's at the site. So this is what it looked like last year, and so the first thing we did is remove the turf, much to my boss's chagrin, who loves turf. And so we did leave a little patch of turf that he wanted outside of his window, but the rest is native plants, and we put in a little hill just for some change in topography. And so between the sidewalk and the entrance where the RV storage yard is where we did some planting. And we planted by the parking lot, and we had a ribbon cutting, and that's Supervisor Hudgens here, who just recently left, but of course it poured the day we were doing our ribbon cutting. That's the way it goes. And these are urban foresters and other developers that were coming to see the site and the project. And they paid for all the trees, which was a real bonus for us. by working with these people, the county urban foresters. It was great, they paid for the trees on the site. And so that's the same area that was all in turf, and Renee was talking about the sedges in the second picture. The little grass-like plant is Pennsylvania sedge. We got those from Ursanga. The other is black-eyed Susan, and then we put in some of the milkweed. And this is a series of photos of what it looks like. And it's so funny, beauty really is in the eye of the beholder. My boss didn't like seeing the black-eyed Susans flopping over the yellow of the curb. And to me, it was softening a hard edge and beautiful. And so, you know, you just have to work with people that have different opinions on what looks nice. And I explained, you know, that's habitat. And then later on, when the milkweeds were out, all of these caterpillars were there. It was just fabulous. I made everybody in the office and my boss come out and take a look at it and say, look at what we've created. Build the habitat, and here they are. And it was just wonderful. We had a lot, probably 50 monarch caterpillars on this site. It was just great. So the third garden I want to talk about is the Lake House Garden. And as I said, that's over by Barron Cameron. And the Lake House is on Lake Newport. And we were changing the landscaping there to be native plants and a pollinator garden. And we worked with volunteers. And volunteers are really a blessing and a curse. You know, it's wonderful. I really appreciate their help. But when you get a group that size, you got to get organized and lay out your plants ahead of time, lay out your tools, explain how to plant. These people aren't gardeners, so you have to teach them the right way to plant, not too deep, not too shallow. And this garden was done by Elisa, and she's got a table over here, and I just love her design. She did the whole design for this garden. And you can see the native plants here. This is Deloitte Impact Day. I said we work a lot with corporate groups that want to come out and do a corporate service project, and we do that more and more. Just yesterday I had 3 corporate groups wanting to do projects. And so, you know, we're removing ivy, we're removing invasives, and oftentimes the corporate groups will give a donation too, maybe $500, and we'll use that to buy native plants and to replant once we're removing the invasive plants. So Deloitte is really wonderful. They have worked with us several years. We just found out this week that they're approving the project for this spring. So we're working on a different site and organizing that. And this is the garden at the lake house, and you can see all the plants that just went in. And this was just done last summer. It was planted a little late, but that's when their project date is. This was planted on June 6th. And this picture was probably in August, and you can see it's really filling in. Here's some nice asters. This is a fragrant sumac around the sculpture, the little wind sculpture that's at the entrance to the lake house. I like the fragrant sumac. Has anybody been to Falling Waters, the Frank Lloyd Wright house in Pennsylvania? So I noticed they had fragrant sumac all in the parking lot there, and I thought, ooh, that's a nice plant. And so, you know, we talked about using that here. It's very nice low shrub, real pretty, native. Sumacs are great. They're another plant that I think is an underused native plant. So also at the lake house, as I said, it's on the lake. It's on Lake Newport, and the Deloitte folks are moving a biolog. A biolog is a coconut fiber core log, and they staple it with stakes onto the shoreline where there's been erosion and a lot of geese that have pulled out the plants. And so we end up having to fence it. Right here you can see where it's fenced and the area's been planted. than with native plants, and then the geese can't come in and pull out all the little plugs, which is what happens when you first put it in. Sometimes you might want to take your core log and put it in a few feet away from the shoreline, and then you have a little nesting area for the little small fry, the little tiny fish that come and hang out there, or for turtles. The coconut fibers, they absorb the water, so you don't have to water the plants that go in there once the core logs go in. But you want to make sure if you get them, store them somewhere where it's dry, because once they get wet, it'll weigh a ton to move. So you want to make sure you move it while it's dry and get it in place. Here's just some real world examples. This was a frustrating case, but this is what you deal with the HOA. So a homeowner went with a low bid and had a tree company come in, and he was doing some approved tree removal, but the company that he hired were not certified arborists, and I'm all about certified arborists, right, Jim? Very important to get a certified arborist. The guy didn't know what he was doing, took down a tree, and it was like dominoes. A bunch of trees came down and resulted in the loss of many trees on the Reston Association open space that was adjacent to his house. And so we had to work with him to replant with native trees back on our area where ours were damaged. And so the homeowner had to pay an additional $4,300 to repair our trees. So, that was frustrating, but definitely a learning experience. And now it's a good example that I can share with other homeowners on the importance of hiring somebody that's certified and knows what they're doing. This is a site where a homeowner had been mowing our hillside, and so we had asked them to quit mowing the property, and they were understanding on that, and they worked with us, and that's on the left-hand side. It's over by Steeplechase. We put in tree seedlings, and now that little berm is reforesting. The area on the right is another area where the homeowner had been mowing our property, and we said, you can't mow the Reston Association open space. It's not your property. You're encroaching. You're in violation of our open space guidelines. And so the homeowner paid for all these shrubs, which was really wonderful. And we did a big reforesting project, and she was very pleased with it. We put down newspaper and wood chips all around the shrubs to kill the grass and let the area grow up. The homeowner was so great. She came out with water and snacks for the crew doing the planting. So that was a real nice experience. Sometimes it's difficult to talk with homeowners about getting off of the open space and allowing it to replant. But really this property belongs to all the residents in Reston. It doesn't belong to that homeowner. And you really need to speak up for the open space, because if you don't, who will? You guys are the ones that are on boards and HOA landscaping committees, and these are the spaces for nature. That's what it's designed for. Oh, tree of heaven is a horrible plant. So tree of heaven, they call it that because it stinks to high heaven. It's a really hard native plant to remove. If you cut it, it sends up suckers all over. And so we were removing the tree of heaven and replanting it with some native hollies and native pines and other native evergreens all in here. And just another example of habitat restoration for the good of all the community. This is one of the monthly Habitat Heroes projects where we're removing bamboo, and we're also removing English ivy. And the point of this slide is to let you know that sometimes these projects take several years. You can't just remove the bamboo and come back and replant it with natives and expect everything to be okay and walk away. This is a many years project. Don't think you're going to do this overnight. You're going to go in, you're going to work with your groups, you're going to roll up the ivy, you're going to remove it, then you wait and you let the little suckers come back. Then you come back and you remove them again. And it might take 2 or 3 years. You know, they didn't grow overnight, and you aren't going to remove them overnight. Digging out bamboo is a lot of back-breaking hard work, and the ivy, it just takes some time. But it can be done. Don't give up. If you get one scout project, have another one come back to the same site. You know, keep it on your Habitat Heroes list several times until you get it under control. Start with English ivy removal. Start with removing it off the trees. Once it grows up the trees, that's when it gets berries. And it doesn't get the berries on the ground, but once it grows up the trees, it gets berries, especially if it's by a stream. The berries fall in the stream, goes downstream, you've got more English ivy. What we say about the English ivy is the first year it sleeps, the next year it creeps, the next year it leaps. So when homeowners say, it's not a problem in my yard, give it time, because sometimes it won't happen right away, but it really gets very aggressive. And the longer it stays, the harder it is to remove. And other folks have talked about some of the resources that are available to you. We've gotten Fairfax Water grants. We've gotten the CAP grant, which is the Community Assistant Program from the Soil and Water Conservation District that are here today. We've also gotten the Chesapeake Bay license plate grant. We use that to fund a brochure on shoreline stabilization, and they paid for the whole thing. It was great. That's another avenue. And if you live in Reston, you can make donations to the Friends of Reston, and we'll use that to buy native plants, and you can get a tax write-off for that. So perhaps your HOA might want to set up a 501c3 so that residents can make a donation. Probably talk to Eric more on the legal part of that. So the importance of marking off a meadow. This is a meadow, and on the top left you can see where we've mowed right next to the pathway. There's some patches where some giant ragweed was recently removed, and we're going to be replanting it. But if you don't define it, sometimes the wildflowers will grow and flop over into the pathway, and then people freak out and think you forgot to mow it. So define it and put up a sign so people know this isn't an area that we forgot to mow or that we're being lazy and not maintaining it. It's here for a purpose. So I find some people don't like the little rope fencing, but the mowers even like to go underneath the rope and mow into the meadow because they're very meticulous and like it clean and neat. And so mark it off and meet with the mowers and meet with the contractors and define the boundaries. I find that that really helps. This is another meadow area, defined it by the rope and the sign. That's a little interpretive sign saying meadow. And then this is one of my co-workers, Jaime, doing some planting of some plugs in a meadow by a tot lot over here. We have 52 meadows in Reston. Some are what I call pocket meadows that are pretty small. Some are larger. But wherever I can get a sun-loving spot to put in some pollinating plants, we'll try and squeeze it in. We're kind of working on a new project now. All along Lawyers Road, underneath the power line, I want to do a long pollinator garden there. Because every time Asplin comes in, we get calls from people freaking out about all the trees that were hat-racked under there. And I understand their concern. I hate to see trees mutilated that way too. But I also am sympathetic to Dominion that's trying to maintain their power line, because when we have storms and the tree branches hit the power line and the power goes out, they get in a lot of trouble, when the homeowners don't have power. So I think a really good solution is to do a pollinator garden all underneath the pipeline. It's something we're just going to be starting. And if you want to come and plant some plugs with us, let me know. I'm going to be working on that. And again, signage. There's a sign on the top left that we designed, Audubon at Home, the top one here, and you've heard today how they're willing to come out to a site, which is wonderful. We got our office building for that garden I showed you certified through the Audubon at Home program. The Xerxes Society did the sign on the right. That's another great organization. We're also in the Mayor's Monarch Watch program, which is one of the programs with National Wildlife Federation. The Wildlife Federation sign is in the bottom middle here, wildlife habitat. So someone mentioned the Community Wildlife Habitat Program from NWF. Probably 20 years ago, I'd heard about it. And so the first one was in Alpine, California, then Zionsville, Indiana, and then Reston was the first community on the East Coast to be certified as a community wildlife habitat. There's hundreds now. And I have to do benchmarking. Every other month we have a phone call that's national and encourages more people to do community habitat. And I think it's great. There's faith place habitat, schoolyard habitat, the homeowner habitat, the workplace habitat. And so when I first heard about the program, I thought, cool, we're a shoo-in, I'll just submit all of our open space. But they said, you have to have so many yards certified, so many offices, schools, and actually it was a lot more work, but it was a lot better, because that way I was able to engage a lot more people in the community. You know, we had a float in the Reston Parade about it. We would go and talk to schools. We would talk to the garden club and get a lot of energy going towards this. And so these kind of programs help you promote and support what you're trying to do. I find some residents are RA, but when I say NWF does it, then it's like, whoa, it gives you more creed. You know, they've got a lot of respect, and so it's backing and support for what you're trying to do here, because these are really great organizations. You know, the Audubon and NWF, they're really great. The Monarch Way Station is a really good program. This is for the pipeline that bisects Reston, and there's a little section of the pipeline that I've been able to work with the pipeline folks that we take on mowing that area. It has some purple milkweed in it. And so we have enhanced this section of the pipeline. I wish we could do the whole pipeline, but we haven't gotten that kind of energy yet. But you know, we have a section of it certified as a Monarch Way Station. Just a couple more signs. This is one that we just had redone. Patricia Greenberg works for Fairfax County Park Authority now. She worked with me and she did the design on this Wildflower Meadow sign, so a shout out to her. And then this is a Wildflower Meadow sign in the middle of the median. Some people have said, well, we have a lot of new people coming into the community and they aren't part of this whole movement. And I said, well, then we need to educate them. You know, we aren't changing because there might be new opinions coming in, because Reston was founded with nature as one of its goals at the very beginning. And I think that's something we can't let go of, and we have to remember, and we have to support that. So when I drove around with the VDOT guys, this is one of the only meadows that was large enough for the wildflower planting. Did the lights come on and tell me to shut up? Because it's perfect timing. So if you have any questions, I'm here.
Yeah, I have a question. You mentioned something about newspaper and mulch.
We did that to so that we didn't have to spray the grass up with Roundup. We put down a thick layer of newspaper, and then we actually put wood chips, because we get a lot of wood chips from our tree work, and so we just put, you know, you do this at your home garden too, I'm sure. You just put down newspaper and then pile up the wood chips so that the plants can grow up and not have the competition. And this was right next to a homeowner property, and we didn't want the grass growing up and it to look weedy. It just made it look better so that we could put in our plugs and let our shrubs grow better. It's just a landscaping technique to avoid the use of chemicals. Pardon me?
The newspaper creates a barrier to water and oxygen.
Ah.
It's better to just put down 4 or 5 inches of wood chips.
Okay.
Hey, one more question. So, ivy, we have a lot of ivy in our community on the trees, but I had somebody who cut ivy off of the base of their tree, and it killed the tree.
Oh, well, yeah, maybe they cut into the root of the trunk of the tree. You have to be careful with
I
that.
heard that if you cut it at the base, the ivy, that it will go in and still try to grab its food from the tree, and
No.
in actuality kill the tree?
Not English ivy, it's not
No.
parasitic.
Okay.
That's probably what Claudia said, was they cut too deep and they cut through the cambium and girdled the tree.
Okay, so cutting it will not kill the tree.
It will not.
Cut the ivy.
We cut it at the base, we go about 3 feet up, and we cut it again, and we remove that section. And then you don't have to pull it all off the top of the tree, just cut that section and it will die up above.
Thank you.
Down,
Why do you cut out a section, why not just sever it all the way around one time?
this is what I've heard, this is what I've read. Do you know why, Jim? This is how we do
The reason
it.
I do it is so I can make sure to cut all the vines.
Okay,
It's just to visualize. You
okay.
only need to cut it once, but cutting out that little window, you can be sure that you've cleared all the ivy.
If you give kids a screwdriver, you have to give them real clear instructions about not poking into the tree. I mean, listen to experience here. But you can kind of pull the, put the screwdriver behind the ivy to pull it out and clip it because it's tight onto it. You know, that's one of the techniques we use.
I think also when you remove that portion of the ivy, you have to be careful that you're not injuring the bark. Because
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah.
Any other questions?
Which of the milkweeds would you recommend?
Well, I did this with the butterfly weed right here, the orange milkweed at the CSF, at our Central Services Maintenance Facility. That was the orange one. But I think check your soil because you're going to want swamp milkweed if you've got wet soil. The common milkweed spreads a lot and is better for a meadow area. It's not as manicured looking.
And the swamp milk, we can also handle some drought conditions, so.
When you did your core log, and you said you planted in the core log,
Yep.
and the geese, what did you had to put fence up?
Yeah, the geese pull the plugs up because there's a lot of geese on the lakes. And so once you put it in, you take like a razor blade knife and you make slits in the core log and you stick your plugs, your cardinal flower, your pickerel weed inside the core log. And if you don't kind of fence it and make sure that they're really in there, we find the geese come and just pull out all your plugs. And then you gotta go back and keep putting them in.
Will they
And
pull out
so-
plugs that you put in the ground as well?
We're doing we're expanding that project, and I'm planning on doing some of those hoop nets around there until they get established,
Where do you get
because the
those?
geese will pull those out.
Okay.
So,
I live in a community where, unfortunately, we lost a tree canopy, which is really kind of severe. And I think part of it is demographics, and we're getting older as a population and we want lower maintenance. And people are also afraid of increasing windstorms, trees falling on
Yes.
our houses.
yeah.
But I think the more trees they cut down, the greater the windstorms.
Yeah, I'm gonna have Jim jump in on that one, but I do want to say that is a problem because oak trees provide such great habitat for our caterpillars, and then with the windstorms, people want smaller understory trees. And so a lot of the overstory canopy trees aren't getting planted, and yeah, I would say that's a concern. Jim, you want to talk about tree loss and the oak decline, or?
Well, we saw quite a bit of tree mortality this past summer, and that's part of the process that started probably 10 years ago when we had two summers that were very like what we had last summer in a row. And those trees continued to decline as they got stressed. A healthy tree should withstand pretty much any of the normal weather we get here, and that includes those summer thunderstorms. Most of the time when I see news reports on trees that fail, I can look at them and tell them they failed because of root rot, because of included bark or various defects in the tree. And that's why you do need to have certified arborists and look at your trees. They're living things just like your cats and your dogs, and you and your team, and they all get to go and see the doctor. Well, certified arborists are the doctors of your tree, and they need to do that. One of the issues we find with HOAs is they move in and they cut out the forest and they have trees that grew to maturity with a lot of trees around them, and now they're on the edge, and they are more susceptible to wind flow, and there's not a whole lot you can do about it. But if they've been standing there for 20 or 30 years, they've gotten used to not having neighbors. So it's only really in the first 10 or 15 years after development that we see big problems with wind flow on the edges of those forest products. The other issue, and I've talked with some people, is in a lot of cases, because of the process, the history of Fairfax County, we see a lot of forests that pioneered as Virginia pine 40, 50, 60 years ago, and those are failing. That's a normal part of the process. That's what those trees do. They move into an old field, they grow for about 50 years, then they get overtaken by the hardwoods and replaced. And it's about time for them to be coming out of the forest. And that's, like I said, it's part of the natural process. We don't need to worry too much about that. Unless they are right next to somebody's house, then do need to do that.
So, I know you've heard this already today, but there is so much information on the BNPS and the Plant Nova Native website. I mean, it's a wonderful wealth of information there. So really go through their websites and support these organizations. They're doing fabulous work. It's amazing, really, what's happening.
I have a question on fallen leaf management. It's just, we're not here representing a board of our cluster, but we're people in our cluster that are concerned. Leaves fall, they come down, and the tendency is it must be manicured, and that can be everything from the blitz blow to it all going into the woods and stacking up or going into our
You're hitting a hot button with me because that drives me nuts. Yes, the blowers and the constant leaf blowers and the need to get it down below bare soil so it's dirt, and they're removing the precious top layer of the soil and they're blowing it, and I go to the open space and I'll put my foot down to find the ground, and I can find leaves up over my knee, and so I do violations a lot with homeowners that have blown the leaves onto our property, with contractors that dump them on our property. Leaves belong in the forest. I mean, that's nature. You have leaf fall, but you want natural leaf fall. That's a small amount that's going to decompose, it's going to allow the ferns, the little tree seedlings to come up, the new growth to be there. But when people dump 3 and 4 feet and they say, well, it's organic, but it's not going to allow the normal growth. They are smothering the understory of the forest, and it's a problem.
Are there resources or things that are there to have some backup to say,
Yes.
this?
There is a very, very good resource. Do a search on Scots and leaves. And even Scots, the people who make turf builder and all that stuff, will tell you, don't rake your leaves, mulch them into your lawn. It's a tremendous resource to rebuild the soil that makes healthier grass.
And plus, I guess if you have to do it, wait till the spring, right? Because
Exactly.
a lot of the bugs, hang out in the winter, the eggs and all that. So it's a good home for them. So, okay, we'll rake if we have to, but wait till, I don't know when exactly, March, April?
Right.
I totally agree with that.
Yeah, because ours, the balance of everything is off. It's the blow it completely into the common area, forest smother the forest, blow it completely into the pond, into the ravine, smother all of that.
Absolutely.
Dirt dry.
Yeah. Yep, I totally understand what you're saying, and that's just a pet peeve when we walk.
What she's talking about is volcano mulching.
Well, yeah, yeah, and it just smothers the understory when it's all blown into the woods.
Or like Circle Donut driving massive equipment over leaves to mulch and then just taking everything
Yep.
out. And we're just looking for resources. resources.
Yeah, I would check out Jim's resource for sure, and talk with your landscape contractors, because they need an education.
Virginia Cooperative Extension has a publication on grass cycling and on leaf mulching. They both say the best thing to do with your grass, cut it high and let it lie. That is, you don't collect the blowy clippings, you put them, all of the, think about everything that's in those blades of grass, all the nutrients and everything, you want that to go back into your soil so it can be reabsorbed into the root of the grass. Same thing with the leaf litter. It's providing a lot of nitrogen, and it's also providing food for your soil ecosystem.
How come I've always heard that the acid in the leaves will kill the grass?
Because people who said that didn't know what they were talking about.
A lot of people don't know what
With the
they're talking
internet,
about.
it's really hard to get rid of it. I will tell you this, I talked with Dr. Mike Copeland, who's the lead turf scientist in Virginia Cooperative. He consults with PGA golf courses. When he is taking care of his yard, he lets the leaf clip, or lets the lawn clippings die and mulches his leaves in. He doesn't own already.
Even when you have
Or
leaves that are
blower or
like
anything
this
else.
high in leaves. When you have
That
leaves,
high, you should never have it that high.
well, then you have so many trees that it causes so
It's not
much.
gonna get that deep.
Okay, in order for
If
you
you
to
got,
have
if you got a little place where it eddies and the leaves accumulate, whole mountain distribute. Okay, that's also a good idea if you think you got a problem with wildfire, because that's what burns down houses and wildfires. Pockets. So you can spread it, but normally the leaf litter is only gonna get about that deep when it first falls and it quickly decomposes.
Thank you. Any other questions?
You said you write violations.
Yes, I write violations. We have rules about protecting our open space. These are open space guidelines, and I'm amazed at the number of clusters that don't have rules and regulations and management plans for their natural areas. They have it for formal areas, you should have it for natural areas too, to protect your open space, and to have some sort of a tool for enforcement for encroachments.
You want to come visit or? I heard you.
Sure. Okay, happy planting.